Before we get today's video started, 82% of y'all that watch these videos aren't subscribed to the channel. What are we doing here? Hit that big red button to stay in the know on Texas Tech athletics all year long right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel. All right, let's jump right into this as we got the three keys to a really big game for Joey McGuire and the Texas Tech Red Raiders as they welcome in the number 25 Houston Cougars, who are actually the first top 25 non-conference opponent at Jones AT&T Stadium since Phillip Rivers in NC State back in 2002. Matt Dowdy coming with that heat over on TexasTech.com with that stat. And also the Red Raiders are looking for their first top 25 victory since 2019 in Stillwater, where they shocked the Cowboys 45-35. But let's jump into the keys of the game here. I've got three of them for you, but let's start off at number one, where it's Texas Tech has to get off to a quick start and make Donovan Smith comfortable. Now, this isn't any kind of talking down on Donovan Smith, but Texas Tech needs to get off to a quick start here against the top 25 team at home, so the crowd will get involved and you make it that much more difficult for a team in the Houston Cougars that struggled last week at the Alamo Dome against UTSA, where they had to go to triple overtime. And really, when you look at the stats, UTSA won a lot of them, but the only stat that matters is, well, Houston came out of there with a W, and they did just that. Some of the points that I want to go over on this quick start is you got to make easy throws for Donovan Smith early and often, and I think Zach Kittley will do that. We saw that last week in terms of some of the trickery, but it turned into an easy throw for Tyler Shuck, but also just the easy throws across the board, whether that was for Baron Morton, whether that was for Donovan Smith or Tyler Shuck. Zach Kittley knows how to put a quarterback in the proper position to succeed. I expect a ton of RPOs because the running back position for Texas Tech is one that Houston will not take lightly, whether that's SaRodorick Thompson, Taj Brooks, Donnell as well, the true freshman. I think that they have options that Houston has to respect, and now they even have to respect more at the quarterback position when it comes to rushing. And Donovan Smith, what will that allow these RPOs to happen later on in the game? Well, it's going to open up space in a secondary where outside of really one guy for the Cougars and Owens, I think that they have a ton of experience back there, but I think it's a part of this team that Texas Tech can exploit because there's not much depth for the Cougars. So I expect these RPOs to really be heavily involved for the Red Raiders and Donovan Smith, whether that's with Taj Brooks, SaRodorick Thompson, or Donnell in the backfield alongside Smith. But this will open up the middle of the field for the Red Raiders to allow them to use those big body wide receivers and those tight ends that are just absolutely massive, whether that's Baylor Cupp, Mason Tharp, or Henry Teeter. Now, again, I mentioned the Cougars secondary. The easy throws come from this, using those RPOs. I think the secondary is a point of attack for the Red Raiders. I think that they have some guys on that defensive line, do the Cougars, that you need to pay attention to, and we'll talk about that in one of the keys to the game here in just a second. But I think the Red Raiders can really exploit the middle of the field in that 10 to 20 yards down from the line of scrimmage, because you look at what Houston has depth-wise in the secondary, and it's really not, I'm not saying it's not great, but it's probably not where they want to be. They have a bunch of seniors starting, a redshirt junior as well, obviously a senior when it comes to school and everything, but that's where you need to exploit if you're Texas Tech, and I think you can do that, and you can see the blueprint from UTSA last week down in the Alamo Dome. Before I get to point number two, let me know down in the comments. Donovan Smith will throw for blank passing yards against the number 25 Houston Cougars this weekend. Again, that question is Donovan Smith will throw for blank amount of passing yards this weekend against the number 25 Houston Cougars. Let me know down in the comments. Now, my number two key to the game is very simple, and I think you could probably say this is a key to the game for every Texas Tech football game this season, but Texas Tech's offensive line has to win against the Houston D-line. It seems like every year, Houston has one of those defensive linemen that are highly touted or maybe go under the radar until they get to the NFL draft combine, and then they soar up a draft board, whether that's Ed Oliver. I forget the guy's name that got drafted by Baltimore a few years ago that just kind of shocked me that he went in the first round. By the Saints that got drafted in the first round. Was just absolutely shocked by it, but it seems like they always have talent on the defensive line, and this year it's no different. The name to know is Derek Parrish. He is a senior, and he is kind of like their Tyree Wilson. I do think Tyree Wilson is a bit better, but Parrish does have that capability of just absolutely game-wrecking on the outside, and I think it's going to be interesting to see where Dana Holgorsen and the Cougars line him up. Do you line him up over on the left side where Caleb Rogers is, where he's arguably your best offensive lineman, or do you throw him onto the right side where Monroe Mills is, as some guys that maybe don't have as much experience for the Red Raiders? I think it's going to be super interesting to see where they go there. Obviously, Williams on their defensive line opposite of Parrish could have a potential good day too because, well, he's going to be receiving less pressure. But I think Parrish is the guy to know. But for me, when you look at this in terms of what Texas Tech has to do, they have to know that U of H will be throwing a ton of stunts at them. And for those that don't know what a stunt is on the defensive line, there's a multitude of ways that they can do this, but the easiest way to describe it is this. Let's say a DT, they're set up with 3 right here. The DT is over here. That was a terrible example. Then right in the middle is the nose tackle, and then the DT and another D end over here. They're going to rotate in or they're going to rotate out to create an effect where 2 guys have to be doubled, which allows one-on-one, or, hey, there's not communication on the offensive line, and that allows an easy run to the quarterback. Texas Tech is going to have to be on their P's and Q's when it comes to communication in this one, because you think about some of the guys on the offensive line for Texas Tech. Dennis Wilburn looked great against Murray State, but this is going to be his first true test in terms of a raucous, and I mean raucous environment. This will be a sellout at Jones AT&T Stadium. The world will be watching on FS1. I think this is going to be a big-time test for the interior of the Texas Tech line. I'm not so much worried about the tackles. I have a lot of faith in Monroe Mills, even though we haven't seen a lot of him. I think he's a very quality Big 12 tackle. We obviously know what Caleb Rogers is. I think the interior with Weston Wright, Wilburn, and Peterson are going to be the real talking point in this one, because I think that's where the Cougars are going to attack. Again, one more time, 82% of y'all watching these videos don't subscribe. What are we doing? Hit that big red button to stay in the know on Texas Tech athletics all year long. If you're looking for football coverage, we've got you. Men's basketball coverage, we got you. In fact, I'm going to men's basketball practice on Friday right before the Houston game, and I will be putting out a video in terms of my thoughts on what I think is going to happen this year for men's basketball and kind of who stood out in this practice. I'll be talking to some of the coaches as well and giving you some of that information. But I want you to subscribe so you can stay in the know. We're not just talking about those 2 sports. We'll talk about baseball, volleyball, soccer, tennis. Oh my goodness, the list goes on and on. Track and field, we've got you covered right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel for everything you need to know about Texas Tech athletics. All right, let's get into my final point of this game, and it really comes down to the Texas Tech wide receivers, specifically the young ones. Again, I talked about it in point number 1, where I think a key to this game is getting off to a quick start, and I think you have to make Donovan Smith comfortable, but with that comes confidence from the young wide receivers. I'm looking at Loic Fouonji. I'm looking at Jerand Bradley. They have to use their size in this matchup against a pretty solid, outside of Owens, as I mentioned, no one really just jumps off the page to me for Houston when it comes to their secondary, but Owens is a senior and a first-team AAC player. He is an absolute stud. He will be a ball hawk in the secondary for the Cougars, but I think you can use the middle of the field. I think you can go outside the numbers. I think there's a lot of things you can do as a Texas Tech wide receiving core with the size you present in those mismatches that size occurs for the opposing team. So you think about it, Loic and Jerand had huge games against Murray State. They don't need to have huge games like that. Now, would it be nice to see that? Obviously. But I think the guy that I'm most watching in this game, because I think they're going to move him around a lot, I think they're going to give him carries in this game, Zach Kittley, it's Miles Price. He will make 2 or 3 plays in this matchup for the Red Raiders that dictate a drive and prolong a drive. I have every confidence in Miles Price in terms of what he's going to do, whether that's in the slot, outside, backfield, in motion. It doesn't matter. You're going to see a lot of just really maybe quote-unquote trick plays with Miles Price, but really it's just going to be a lot of movement and allowing Donovan Smith to see what Houston is in, whether that's man, zone, if there's going to be pressure coming. They're going to use Miles Price to make Donovan Smith a little bit more comfortable and get him into space early and often. Again, give me your score predictions down below. I know I've asked that in a couple of other videos. For those that are subscribed, you know that, but the 82% of y'all that watch these videos that don't subscribe, you know what? Maybe you don't know. Tell me your score prediction in the comments below. I let you guys know my score prediction over on the previous video on the channel with Lyle, where we broke this all down, and Lyle had great insights because, well, he's played for Dana Holgorsen. He's also worked for Dana Holgorsen. Lyle is the guy when it comes to knowing what's going on in that Houston program and what you need to watch out for. So be sure to give that video a watch as well. But again, in the comments below, give me your score prediction for number 25 Houston at Texas Tech. Joey McGuire will be looking for his first top 25 victory as a head coach, and the Red Raiders will be looking for their first 25 victory against a team since, well, 2019. And one more time, 82% of y'all aren't subscribed? Come on, man. Help a brother out. Help us get it to 700 before the kickoff of the Houston and Texas Tech game. I'm RC Maxwell, reminding you one more time, for the best place to get Texas Tech athletics news on YouTube, you know where to go. It's right here on the Back to 12 podcast channel.